Hi everybody, my name's Adam. I'm your training director here at INTERLINK Education. Today we're going to have a training session about teaching listening and reading skills. By the end of this session, I hope that everybody will understand the purpose of the pre, during and the post stage, know when and why to use each stage, and to learn strategies to support weaker students during these lessons, and also to have some sample activities that you can use in your listening and reading lessons. Well, first of all, why are we talking about listening and reading skills? Well, because they are receptive skills, and receptive skills are the skills which always come first. Receptive skills must come before productive skills. Things need to go in before they start to come out. So, what is our goal when we are teaching receptive skills? Our goal is to teach students not just to understand, but we have to check that they have understood. This can be more challenging because receptive skills like listening and reading is something they do kind of passively. So what we need to do is we need to find a way of making this into an active skill. So my first question when we're thinking about listening and reading skills is, how do you listen or read in real life? How often do you listen or read and you don't have a context, you don't have some sort of expectations? Well, let's say you're going to a train station, right? You're going to expect to read about train times, about places. You're looking for specific information about the place that you want to go. Or if you go to an airport, what are you doing? You're listening for specific information which is related to you and the name of your flight. How often does our classroom practice reflect this? Well, I think not often enough. I think more often than not, we're going into listening and reading tasks without taking that time to set up expectations, without taking that time to let students know what they're going to listen to let students start to think about it before it comes. I think often when we go to listening and reading tasks, well, the first thing we do is listen, read. And that's not a very natural way of actually doing the listening and reading tasks. In this session, hopefully I'll present some more natural ways of approaching it, which will definitely help you and your students. So, the pre, during and post framework. This is the framework which I'm going to suggest that we use in all listening and reading lessons to help prepare your students for success. Well, pre, what are we doing at pre? What we're doing is we're preparing them to listen. We're preparing their minds. We're helping this vocabulary come to the top of their heads so it's there and ready to be used. During listening or reading, what we're doing is we're guiding them. We're trying to give them some sort of support where they're not having to look at all of the information at one time. But like the example I used in the train station or the airport, we're giving them something specific to focus on so they're not overwhelmed, so then we can do it step by step, piece by piece. Post, what are we looking to do? We're looking to expand their knowledge, whether it's about the vocabulary or the content, and we're looking for them to apply their knowledge. Like I said earlier, what we have to do is, with the receptive skills, the big challenge is how can we turn a passive skill into something more active? And it comes in large in the post, where we're applying the things that we've learned. Okay, so pre, setting the learners up for success. So as I spoke about earlier, is the real purpose behind this is to build a background, develop interest, help to give vocabulary. The reasons why I think are obvious, but some examples. What you can do is that before you listen, you can show them a picture. Show them a picture or a scene of what you're going to listen. What I like to do is I don't ask them specific questions about things in the picture. So what's this, what's this, what's this? But I like to let them tell me, what can you see? And when I ask them what can you see, they can use whatever language they have right now to name things in the pictures. Often I would do this as a pair and work activity. So for example, name 5 things you can see in the picture. Then they work at pairs. Each pair says different things. So in a way, that's also a good way to help them to teach each other different vocabulary that they know. Brainstorm ideas. So for example, you could show pictures from the story and they could brainstorm things that they think the story is about. For higher levels, you can give the title of the story or a brief description of the story. Then they could brainstorm ideas about what they think that they're going to hear. Vocab check, you could take some key vocabulary out from the listening or the reading text. You could just do a quick check. So you could go over it to make sure that they know this vocabulary. Often we call it blocking vocabulary. Blocking vocabulary means that if they don't know this vocabulary, they're going to be unable to understand the reading or the listening. If they can understand it without that vocabulary, I would recommend that you don't pre-teach too much vocabulary, because think about it like this, right? If I teach you 5 words now and you don't know why you're learning them, how likely are you to remember them? Not very likely. However, if I teach you 5 words that you have just read or listened to, that you now all of a sudden have a reason for knowing these 5 words, are you more likely to remember them? Absolutely. So it's more effective to teach, to let a need arise and to teach following that need, than just to teach and hope it sticks. Next, the during stage. The during stage is all about guiding comprehension to keep learners engaged and focused. So what you want to start with is something like larger, which is just the general meaning of the text, where they don't have to understand everything, but they should understand the general idea first, and then move to something a bit more detailed. Give clear, simple tasks. Repeat exposure with purpose. I really like this phrase, because what is the maximum time you can listen to a listening or read a reading? Well, it depends on how many different tasks you have. If you're asking students to reread a reading or listen to a listening 5 or 6 times, and they don't have different things to do, but you're just asking them to read or listen, well, they're going to get really bored. However, if you break it down where each time they listen, each time they read, they have a slightly different task to do, and each task is helping to further their understanding of the text, well, they're going to be happy to listen or to read 5, 6, 7 times. In my listening lessons or reading lessons, it's not uncommon to have at least 5 different tasks to keep students engaged with the content. Then after doing these tasks, when it comes to the post, well, they're ready, because they've looked at every small part of the reading or listening. They've understood it, because we've been going step by step by step by step, moving in little steps up and down. Some activities. So tick words or order pictures. Yeah, a great first task can be order the pictures in the order you hear them. Then maybe a second one is, based on your predictions about what you think you're going to hear, tick to see whether you heard it in the text or not. Then, again, you can see reading, true or false. You could ask or answer true or false questions. They could predict the answers based on a picture or based on the title. Then they could read to check. They could match headings. Matching headings, again, it's a very global understanding. It's not too detailed. So these tasks are tasks which help focus learners on the details you want them to focus on. Don't try to get them to focus on everything in the listening or the reading text. It's too much for them. And also, a quick tip is never let learners read or listen if they don't have a task. They always need to have some sort of task, because if they don't have a task, well, they may become distracted. They may not know why they're listening, why they're reading, so they're not going to get the information you want them to get out of it. And lastly is the post, so using the new language actively. So like I said, the challenge is moving a passive skill into a more active skill. There's ways that it can do this. It can discuss opinions, role play, summarize. They can do anything where you basically have 2 choices. You can do activities which are basing it on the content, so you're approaching it from a content, or you can do activities which are focused on the language, so the vocabulary or the grammar. In general, a key term here is personalization. You want them to do something personal with the language that they've learned, so it becomes personal for them, and they're more likely to remember it because they've connected it to a personal experience. So, weaker students, what you need to be doing is that you need to be thinking about how you're going to scaffold and support weaker students. Everything that we spoke about in terms of the pre and the during is designed to support a good range of different students. Here are some more things you can do. You can provide more visuals, pictures. You can pre-teach them words which you think might confuse them if there are too many unknown words. You can provide lots of guiding questions like we spoke about when we were talking about the during tasks. You can pair strong students and weak students together, so the weak students can ask the strong students. Often, when I give my students tasks, I let them check their answers with each other, because sometimes they don't know an answer and they don't know why they don't know an answer, but asking their friend in their own native language can help them understand it much better. And allow extra time or partial tasks just mean that if you have a wide range of different learners, you can actually create a variety of different tasks. For example, you can have 5 really basic questions and then 10 other questions, where the 5 are still the most basic and the 5 are the extra questions. You give the 5 basic questions to the weaker students and then the 5 extra questions to the stronger students. Again, what you need to do is be careful with this, because if you're giving fewer questions to the weaker students, you don't want to give the signal that they're weaker, but what you want to do is give the signal trying to challenge the stronger students. To just give you an example of what this might look like in a lesson. So if we're doing a lesson about at the market, what I might do is get a picture of a market and have them work in pairs and have them brainstorm in pairs 5 things that they can see in the picture. This way I can generate lots of vocabulary that they're likely to listen to or read about when we get into the listening or the reading. Next, we can maybe listen for gist. So we can ask them a task. So listen, what things did you brainstorm that you heard in the listening? Then we can do it in a bit more detail, so I can give them multiple choice, and then they can answer the multiple choice questions based on the listening and the reading. Then I can give them something a bit more detailed, so on and so forth. And then eventually the post could be a role play where they're a buyer and a seller. So what we'd have to do is include a during task, which has them focus on the interaction between the buyer and the seller to make sure that they're aware of the language they're expected to use. So common mistakes are some teachers I see only have 1 listening or 1 reading, which is comprehension questions. This is the way that most textbooks are structured. So they have a listening and they have a bunch of questions. I see many teachers approach listening and reading in this way. It's not effective, it's confusing, it doesn't help them to develop their listening and reading skills. It's just a test. Whereas doing lots of activities of pre, during and post, it's helping to develop their skills, not just to test them. Often I see there's no warm-up or no follow-up. So often I see that the during stage is focused on, but there's no pre-stage and there's no post stage. Post is really important to get them to turn it into passive knowledge into active knowledge. So instead, teach strategies for listening. Try to build confidence. Try to recycle language. Try to get them to listen and read as many times as possible. Just a few quick activities. So you can do sound bingo for listening. You can do word bingo, so you can get them to make their own bingo grids. You could make bingo grids for them. They could listen and they could tick it off as they hear it. You could have multiple choice questions. You could have picture ordering like we spoke about earlier. You could have them make lots of predictions and then check in their predictions. With readings, you could get them to match headlines. You could have a story jigsaw. Story jigsaw is where you give part of the story to each different group, and then they have to work together to retell the story and then piece it back together. You could do read or draw. Again, this is a great task where you split the reading up into parts, and then each group you give a different part. They draw a picture of it, and then they showcase their pictures in a gallery, and then they work to try and piece the story back together. Really interesting task. What's the next word? To help them to focus on the key things you want to focus on, you could say, I will say 2 words, you tell me what are the next 2 words in the reading. That way that they practice their scanning skills, and then they're focusing on the key vocabulary or grammar you want them to focus on. And finally, just a quick recap is, remember that your pre-task is preparing them. Your during task is guiding them to understanding it in the way, in bit by bit, step by step. Your post task is to extend it and apply it and to personalize it. So at the end of this video I would really like it if you guys would comment below the video. Tell me what's one thing that you want to try and apply in your next lesson. It's always great to hear back from you after you watch my videos, because this is why I do them. I do these videos to try and help and support you guys. And that is it for now. If you have any questions or if anything wasn't clear, please leave a comment. I will see it and get back to you. All right, good luck. Take care.